Hello everyone, my name is Paulo Alves and I'm developing on this channel an application for my new startup using the Ionic Framework. On the previous videos we created all the screens of our application, only the visual part. We worked only with HTML and CSS. And I'm not sure if you noticed, but we didn't develop a really important part of our application which will allow our users to already test the app and test the flow of how it's going, which is the navigation part of the application. As the goal here is always to create something minimal and increment the application's functionality, on this video we are going to create the navigation between the pages of our app. So let's go to the code. Let's start by going to our app and seeing that the first page that loads is the loader page. This page will be necessary to show to the user that the application is being loaded when the user is in the browser. If the user is using its cell phone, then the user will see the splash screen, not this screen here. The first thing we have to do here is to try to simulate the application was loaded and the user was redirected to the login page. If I go to the approuting.module file, we can see all the existing routes in the application. Here's the empty route, which redirects us to the loader route. That's exactly what happened actually when I entered the application. Then we have the login, register, home, pickup call, and pickup calls routes. What we have to do is, from the loader page, redirect the user to the login page. My goal here is to do everything or almost everything using test-driven development, also known as TDD. So let's start our tests with the npm test command. We can see here on the command line that our project currently has no tests. So let's go to the actions file of the loader page, which is the file loader.page.ts, and also to the test file of that page, which is the loader.page.spec.ts file. This file describes the tests for the loader page. We can see that before each test, some settings are created and that I get access to our component here on this line. In TDD, we should always start with a test that clearly fails just to ensure that our test is actually running. So to declare the actual test, I use the it function. I'll inform that it should go to the login page after load. So let's start our test. I want to run a test that clearly fails. So first I'm going to expect that true is going to be equal to false. I will save it and we'll be able to see on our test that it's showing an error. Here we have one failed test and no successful tests. If I change this true to false and then expect false to be false, we'll see that our test will pass successfully. Great, now we can already start programming. What I want to do is, when entering the loader screen, the application will be redirected to the login page. As I want this to be performed when the user enters the application, then I'll call our component's ngOnInit function. So let's call that component.ngOnInit. This function here, ngOnInit, of the component, it is always executed when our component is started. Every time the loader page is opened, let's say, it will execute this ngOnInit function. So if we come to the Ionic documentation, in this part called navigation/routing, we can go down a little bit and check how to navigate from page to page. It is this code here. Then let's quickly understand the code first. I declare that our component is using this router, and then I simply say that the router will use the navigate function, and with that function it will navigate to the details page. So let's go back to our test code. First I need to have the router, right? Until now I have nothing. Then I declare a router variable that will be of the type router. But for now this is a null variable, so I have to instantiate this variable in order to be able to use it in the code. So I'll inform here that the router will receive a testbed.getRouter. What this testbed does is to create an instance of a service or a component. Now that we already have this instance, I can really start our test code. Let me first remove this code that always returns true, and I'll inform that our test expects that the router's navigate function has been called with an array that has the string login. If I save, we see that our test again fails. It obviously fails because I'm not calling this anywhere in the function ngOnInit. So let's make the call. I enter the component and I have to inform that this component is going to use our router. I can inform this in the constructor. I'll save it and we'll see that we are receiving an error after our test run that informs us that this router does not have a provider. That happens because I did not declare that my test component is using this router. To do this, I come to the configuration and I'll import a component called app routing module. I'll put a comma, I'll save it, and we'll see that this error is at least not going to be the same. The error we are getting now is that this call to have been called with should get a spy, but we are actually sending a function to it. This happens because the expect instruction is receiving a function, but the expect instruction shouldn't receive a function. It should receive a spy. So let's create the spy. I will inform in our test that I will spy on the router object, and on that object, I will spy on its navigate method. This line will inform that my test has to watch the navigate function of the router object. With that, I can ask the test if this function is being called with this parameter that I'm informing here in our test. I'll save it, and after that we'll be able to see that our test is failing because it expected that the navigate spy has been called with an array that has the string login, but it isn't. And it's not being called with the string login because I didn't make this call in the actual code. So let's go to our ng on init code and let's make this call. Here I have to declare that our router will call the navigate function passing as parameter an array that has the login string. I'll save it, and now finally we will see that our test will pass. Great. For beginners, these tests, well, at least for me when I was a beginner, they look like a bit of a waste of time, but they are extremely important for us to show that our code doesn't fail. So imagine that by mistake a programmer inserted an error in our code stating that instead of navigating to the login page, it should navigate to the home page. If the programmer does this and saves it, when we execute the test, we'll see that the test is failing. Then we realize that a bug was inserted in the code. So let's go back to what it was before and we'll continue our programming. Now let's go to our app and check that everything is really working. I'll enter here in the application with the empty URL and we'll see that we will be redirected to the login screen right after going through the loader screen. I'll just add a timeout here so we can really check this. So I'll add a timeout informing that this timeout should be executed after 1 second. When I return to the page with the empty URL, we'll see that loader and we were redirected to the login page. I actually think it is better to leave it like this because it looks better visually. The application is loading and then it's going to the login page. Just notice that our test now is showing an error. This happens because that setTimeout function is an asynchronous call, but our test is not waiting for an asynchronous call. I mean, it's running without waiting for that 1 second on our timeout. So what we have to do is to make this test asynchronous. To do this, we can use the fakeAsync function, which will simulate that something is happening asynchronously, and I'll wait for 1.5 seconds before going to the expect instruction. And then what will happen is that our test passes. And great, if we go to our app, we see that we are on the login page. So let's go to the next step, which is after clicking this login button, the user should be redirected to the home page. Before that, I will close the files that we have open now, and let's go to our login page.ts and also to our login page.spec.ts. I'm going to start by creating a test that fails. Then we should go to the home screen at login. Let's create the body of our test, and I'll create a code that will clearly be false, just to make sure that this code is really being executed. When I save it, we'll be able to see that we'll have an error in our tests. One test failed and one test was successful. Let's just change here to false to see if everything goes successfully. Kind of repeating what we did on the loader screen, we'll create here our router variable. I'm going to inform that this test will import the app routing module. And I will also instantiate this variable by using testbed.getRouter. What I really expect from this test is that the router.navigate function has been called with, as the parameter, an array containing the string home. As you already know, what I have to do now is to spy on this router in the navigate function, and then I'm going to save and we will see that our test will fail. That happens because our test is not running any other function outside of it. So what I'm going to do is to inform that I'm going to use the login function, which has not been created yet, from our component. So I'm going to save it and let's go to our component to create this logging function. What that function is going to do is to navigate to the home page. To do this, I have to inform that this component is using the router, and now I can already create the code of the navigation in the logging function. Then to navigate, I'll pass an array with the string home. When I save it, we will see that our test will perform successfully. But if I come to our login screen and then click on the login button, we'll see that nothing happens. And nothing happens just because I'm not calling this function on the click of the button. So we can go to the login page.html file, and I'm going to inform here that on the button click, what will be executed is the login function. Now save it, we can go back to the login page, and when I click on the login button, we'll see that we are being redirected to the home screen. So I'm going to go back to the login screen and let's do something like this with our registration button. First, I'll go back to our test file and I'll create a new test informing that this test should go to the register page on the register button. Let's create the body of that function then. As we already did it here, I'll just copy and paste this function as they are kind of the same. I'll inform that I will be redirected to the register screen. That's not going to work because I'm calling the login function and the login function takes me to the home page. So what I have to do here is to declare a new future register function, and now I'll create this new future function. This register function is going to simply navigate to the registration page. Then I'll save it and we'll see that our test will pass. The next thing I need to do is to declare that our button will call that function when I click on it. So I'm going to save it, we can come to the login page, and when I click on the register button, we come to the registration page. Okay, one thing that we can see is not working here is that our back button is not showing up. So let's go to our register page and add that back button that I forgot to add in the previous video. So I will declare that I have a group of buttons and that this group of buttons will be at the beginning of the toolbar. Inside of this group of buttons, I will declare that I have an Ion back button with the title equal to empty. I'll save it and we'll go to the loader screen. We'll be redirected to the login screen. I'll click register and the back button shows up. And great, now let's create something like that for the register screen. There's a register button here at the bottom of the page, and by clicking on this button, I want the user to go to the home screen. So what I'm going to do is to close all these files and open our register files, the action file and the test file. So as I did in the other files, I'll first create a router of the type router. I'm going to import the app routing module so that this test works. And then I will instantiate that router. Router equals to testbed.getRouter. Okay, so let's create our test. Let's create the body of our test, and as I have shown you before, I'm going to create the spy in the test to spy on the navigate function of the router. I will expect for the router.navigate to have been called with an array containing the string home. I'll save it, and obviously this will show us an error because I'm not executing anything in this function. So what I'm going to do is to create a future function here that will be called register. Now let's create this function in our component. I have to inform that this component will use our router, so let's import the router in the constructor. And then we'll use that router, router.navigate, and I will pass to it an array with the string home. Our tests are going to pass, and what I have to do now is to call that function on the click of the button. I'm going to call the register function here. I'm going to save it, and let's go back to the screen. When I click on the register button, we are redirected to the home page. So now let's deal with the home page. It has two navigation actions. One when I click on the CO button, which will show all the pickup calls that we already have created, and another action when I click on the floating button to create a new pickup call. I'm going to close everything and let's go to our home page and our home page spec files. The same way as before, I will declare a router variable. I will import the app routing module here so it can be used. And then I will instantiate that router. Router equals to testbed.getRouter. Okay, let's create our test that will fail. It should go to the pickup calls page on see all. By clicking on that see all button, it goes to the page showing the list of pickup calls. I will spy on that router object, and on that object I will spy the navigate function. What I'm going to do now is expect that the router.navigate has been called with an array containing the string pickup calls. Okay, what I'm going to do is to copy and paste this test here, as it's kind of the same thing. It should go to the create new pickup call page on the create pickup call button. Here you have to navigate to the pickup call in the singular. I'll save it, and obviously we'll see that these two tests fail, and they fail because I didn't actually create the call. So let's declare that our component will call the function go to pickup calls. This function doesn't exist yet, so let's declare this function on our component. For the component to be able to do the navigation, we have to import our router here in its constructor, and then we'll call the method navigate from the router by passing an array with the string pickup calls. When I save it, we'll see that only one test is failing, which is this test down here, pickup call. Okay, now let's declare that our component will call a new function called new pickup call. This function doesn't exist yet, so I'll copy and paste it here. I'll copy and paste this code also just to make it easier, and I'll remove the S here at the end. Now after saving it, we'll see that our tests will pass. The last thing I need to do is to call these functions in our HTML code. So we have our see all button here. I'll inform that on its click, that function go to pickup calls is going to be called. I'm going to copy the name of the new function and make the call on the onClick method of our floating button. Let's save it, and now let's test the page. When I click on the See All button, I'll go to the page with all the calls I have done. We can go back, and when I click here on the floating button, I'll go to the Create a New Pickup Call page. Excellent, it's working exactly the way we wanted. Now only one thing is missing here, is the click of this button, so let's finish the video doing this again. I'll close everything that I have here, I'll go to our pickup call screen, to our file, right? And let's go to the test file also. I'll declare our router. I will inform that this test is importing the app routing module, and I will instantiate that router variable using testbed.get. Let's go now create our test that will not work. This test should go to the home page on create a new pickup call. We could have created a success page showing that the new pickup call was created, but we didn't do it yet, so for now let's take the user to the home page again. I will spy on that router object, and I will spy more specifically the navigate function. Then I expect the router.navigate has been called with the parameter, not times, this time test the number of times it was actually called, but I want to test it was called with an array parameter containing the string home. I'll save it, and we'll see that our test will fail again. Okay, now I'll inform that our component will have a call to a function called new pickup call. This function does not exist yet, so I'll save it, and let's create that function in our component. For our component to be able to do the navigation, I have to inform that it is using that router, and then after that I will actually use the router. Router.navigate, the parameter will be an array with the string home. After saving it, our test passes. And I can come here to the HTML file and create the click method, the function that will be called on the click of that button. I'll save it, we'll be able to come to our pickup call page, and when I click on it, we are redirected to the home page. Alright, now I can already generate a package that our partners will be able to install on their phones, and by using their phones they can test the flow of the application, I mean the navigation between the pages. On the next videos of the channel, we are going to start developing the application end to end. And what I mean here is that we are going to create the whole code of the login functionality of our application. We are going to create the state management in the front end. We are going to call a service. The service is going to call some REST API that's on the back end. Then we are going to create the back end to respond to that API call made by the front end. And that back end will contact the database, get the information. I mean, we are going to create the whole flow from the front end to the back end, everything. After we finish this, we are going to create the whole flow on the registration page, end to end. And then we are going to move to the home page and then to the pickup call page and so on. So it means that on the next videos, we are going to generate a full stack flow. Front end calling the back end and the back end responding to the front end. So subscribe to the video if you are not subscribed yet for some reason. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, share with your dev friends, and see you on the next video.